Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Woolman. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
We're good to go, and we're on the air live. Coming at you from Between Two Chairs studio in Miami, Florida.
I love it.
All right, Jess, we're ready for the unveiling of today's prop.
Oh my God.
Do you know who this is?
Yeah, I think I do. Oh my God.
Tommy Zero isn't the cutest.
Absolutely. This is from A Nightmare Before Christmas. Is that what it is?
Meet Zero.
Oh my God. Going along with our theme of Halloween and everything that is scary.
But not really.
Oh my goodness.
So I had to bring Zero because he's dressed up like a little ghost.
That's right.
And our theme for now, of course, is Ghost Kitchen. Because why not?
I think with that, we can do a formal intro. Welcome, everybody, back to Between Two Chairs, another episode. Today, we're going to be discussing ghost kitchens. My name is Fernando Arencibia, and with me, as always, is my incredible partner, Jennifer Woolman. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, how are you, Fernando? I'm so glad you liked.
Oh, I loved it. I can't wait for my girls to see that video. They're going to love it as well. All right. So let's talk about ghost kitchens. I think that's a very appropriate title for the month of Halloween.
So I do too. I'm not sure why I picked it because I've got a
ghost.
Because it has ghost in. This is true. It was a little tricky getting more scary stuff. So ghost kitchens, they're also known as dark or virtual kitchens, are basically kitchens that are built, commissary kitchens that are built for food delivery. They're located within a specific radius of a restaurant trying to increase the volume, or they're concept kitchen and they're within a specific radius of the customers that concept kitchen is trying to reach. And the reason I liked the idea of doing ghost kitchens, not just because it has the word ghost in it, but also because it gets to our topic, which to now has been fear and then planning to overcome fear. And given how many restaurants are trying to come to Miami and start up in Miami, I thought the idea of a ghost kitchen is a great idea for somebody who's starting out because, one, we're having a really hard time finding available spaces, especially second-generation restaurant space is really tough to find in Miami. But two, the cost of building out, putting in a grease trap, building out a restaurant and everything else is also very high. So I thought, a ghost kitchen could be a great in-between step.
This is great because, we don't do a lot of pre-planning for our episodes, so I love your rationale. The thing that gravitated to me was this idea that there were ghost kitchens or these virtual cloud kitchens, whatever you want to call it, prior to the pandemic.
Correct.
Right? But then as the pandemic did for so many trends, that trend got extremely accelerated. And you really have to look at how hard it was to be a restaurateur during all of the closures in the pandemic. And I think that there was the ability, right, that human spirit of adapting to the new reality. And I think that's why you saw this proliferation of dark kitchens, because what the restaurateurs realize is, I have a kitchen, I have the hood, I have the grease trap, I'm ready to cook. I can't have people in here, right? But I can still do deliveries. I can still do so many different things to try to feed my family and to try to take care of my employees. And so, again, that shift to the ghost kitchen models, like many of the trends that were accelerated during the pandemic, it's here to stay for sure.
Right.
And we're going to see different, better iterations of it, I believe.
Right. And to your point, everything's shifting because there was pre-pandemic, the pandemic, and then now there's post-pandemic, right? And the post-pandemic shift is, okay, everything that boomed during the pandemic, not every boom is going to last, not every change is going to last. So what is everything going to finally look like when it settles down and it just becomes now, right? Not
correct.
Post-pandemic, not about what's happening now. And because we're still in that transition year where numbers, we talked about the port last episode, where numbers are still coming back. Restaurants now have seen a huge surge as people are able to go out. So how is that going to affect the ghost kitchen? But to your point, during the pandemic, everybody was opening up ghost kitchens. According to Bloomberg, in 2021, Wendy's announced plans to open up 700 ghost kitchens across the U.S., Canada, and the UK. And Rigo Restaurant Group said its Quiznos and Taco Del Mar brands were also going to open 100 ghost kitchens. So, and those are interesting, right? Because most of Wendy's are drive-thrus, right? So it's not even somebody having to go in. So I thought that was really interesting. But my favorite local, just to bring it back to Miami, is that I had no idea that both Dwayne Wade and DJ Khaled had ghost kitchens in Miami. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Oh, you did know that. Of course you knew that. So tell me.
I did. There's a big company called Reef that was well-funded and brought the concept to Miami. They famously were lauding how the city of Miami was open to contemplating their concept of having these basically kitchens that were popping up in parking lots. They were activating parking lots, and they just wanted to geolocate so that people would have access to their brands anywhere they were, physical access to it, even though there wasn't a physical store. And they made a deal with Wendy's and with a lot of national and international brands. So I know DJ Khaled made a deal with them as well. And interestingly, Reef is shifting their concept from having the physical food truck kind of concept to now focusing more on the tech that they've created, the OS, the operating system that they've created in order to do the ordering more structural and having the back-end infrastructure digitally in place. Because what people have discussed is that what we're seeing is the digitization of restaurants. I was reading a stat that is not my fun stat at the end, but I would say that the food delivery market globally is worth more than 150 billion. It has tripled since 2017. That's a huge growth, right? And so that's why this idea of the ghost kitchen it's here to stay, right? Just because of the fact that we have such a demand, right? And consumer behavior has shifted so much because of all the food apps that restaurants have to figure out a way to accommodate for that. And during the pandemic, you know Chef Niven Patel from all the great concepts that he has created, like Ghee and of course Mamey
and Horno.
And one of the things that they were very intentional about was how much thought was given to which container to buy that would get the food to your table in the way that they want to present it. I think that what we're going to see is an evolution, not only in the way that the food is delivered, where it is delivered from, but also in the containers that we use to be able to deliver that experience, which is what I think restaurateurs that care about that quality, that's the thing that they're most concerned about let's talk about the dynamics of the ghost kitchen, because I find this fascinating because, again, it's about adaptation. Change is a constant in business, and so, restaurants have to adapt to the new realities. The promulgation of these apps like, Uber Eats and Grubhub and the like, DoorDash, Postmates, what happens with this is that they charge a large fee that is added to the cost of the food for the consumer. And so, in order to make the numbers work, it's hard to do that when you are running that out of a full restaurant, right? The restaurant has other considerations. You got to have a certain number of tables. You got to have people bussing those tables. You got to have servers. There are certain guidelines that you have to follow. And I think that what a lot of restaurants did is they said, well, in the ghost kitchen, I could bring down my cost. And now dealing with those apps makes sense. And I think that there was a moment of realization: do we create our own apps and do our own delivery and have our own delivery person, or do we just understand that this is the way that the market has shifted and that the consumer behavior has shifted, and then I'm going to acquiesce, or I'm going to, address it at that point?
And they also adapted by, a restaurant usually doesn't put their full menu into a ghost kitchen, so it might just be their most popular takeout items or whatever. Right. So it also really allows them to focus. If they have their staff split, where the ones for delivery or at the ghost kitchen and the ones at the brick and mortar restaurant are there taking care of those people, both customers are going to have a better experience than if they're trying to do everything out of the restaurant. During COVID, we're in Miami, so we had a lot of places that were still open, but I went to one of my favorite Thai places called Tanny Thai. And if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I'm like obsessed with little robots that cut grass. But there was also this robot there that was a waiter. And this little robot, all it did was so Tanny Thai moved all the seating upstairs. They had like a platform. All their seating was upstairs, and then they cleared the downstairs to have this path for this robot. And all this robot did was go back and forth between the kitchen and the host, delivering the meals that were there for pickup, whether it was pick up from directly by the client or Grubhub or Postmates or whatever. So needless to say, I go back just to obsess over that little robot. But, to your point, so...
Okay, you haven't taken me there, so,
we'll have to go.
Faux pas.
Yeah. So behind China, the U.S. is the second largest online food delivery market in the world, estimated at $218 billion in revenues in 2022. Out of that, $76 billion were generated just in meal delivery segment. It's a huge market. That was 2022, so already coming out of the pandemic. I think those numbers are going to drop and shift. I've been seeing more space available in commissary ghost kitchens. I've been seeing some of them for sale. We have several companies in the Miami area that do have. So they kind of are like the WeWork of ghost kitchens. They're companies that were very, very well funded that have several small spaces. So you go in like a WeWork area and you just go in and everybody has their kitchen space with all the stuff like kitchen labs and cloud kitchens, etc.
Well, I found that interesting because like many other places in the country before the pandemic, we did see a incredible growth of food trucks. They're still very, very popular. And many of those food trucks here in Miami have become brick and mortar restaurants. Right. And we see them all around. With the ghost kitchen or with the version of like the WeWork, it's another iteration of that, of that path of growth for a young entrepreneur that maybe has one product but doesn't have a business yet. And we saw a few of that. We saw teachers that started making bread and created a bread company. We saw different types of entrepreneurs and even professionals that, were just really good at doing something. And then all of a sudden we have some great clients that created a fish dip, which is amazing, right? And so, it started out of their kitchen and it just grew and grew and grew. And so I find that...
give them a full shout out because they have
What Are We Smoking?
What Are We Smoking? Yeah. They have the best fish dip, and I'm totally going to sidetrack here. They have the best fish dip. They are at Pinecrest Market on
right.
Sundays. They're amazing. Their Wahoo dip is to die for.
It is really, really
it's
good.
really good. So sorry, I digressed. But yeah.
Absolutely. Well, they got
I didn't give them a shout out. They're really good.
Swordfish, and they are incredible. I just love it.
They're all good. But.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I just love it. I'm just really excited for the future iterations of what we call a ghost kitchen,
Right.
because I think that it does provide a lot of opportunity. If you're a young entrepreneur and you're going into a cloud kitchen where you can utilize a small space and see if you could scale where you're trying to make and see if there's a business there for you, it's great that those opportunities are there.
Yeah, so there's one that started here, and to your point, in reiterations, I think, and to our point about planning and getting started and using this as a concept. So Miss Cheesiest started out with a food truck and now has a awesome restaurant. Everything cheese sandwiches is amazing in the Mimo area of Miami. So they started like that. But in terms of a ghost kitchen, there's one concept that has taken off. It's called Two Korean Girls. Mm-hmm. And they started in a ghost kitchen. They kept a ghost kitchen, but now they're also opening a bricks and mortar store. So I think restaurants are going to be very, very similar to the rest of retail, where you need an omni-channel presence.
That's right.
And to your point about the cost of delivery services, I think a lot of these places are going to do it in-house. They're going to figure out the tech, because a lot of the delivery not only costs the consumer, it also costs the restaurant, right? Sure. So they end up paying a chunk. And I can't remember who the restaurant was, but I read recently that one of the restaurants was going to limit the number of online companies that deliver their food, because it was a huge cut in their space. Now, they were also operating out of a restaurant, but they were going to do their own app. I think that's going to be tricky. I'm not going to let you know why I think that's going to be tricky now, because that's my closing fun stat. We're not ready yet, but I won't give it up. But
how much of this move to the cloud kitchens and the ghost kitchens was a part of this flight to industrial that we saw during the pandemic?
I think some, just because of the restaurant space not being so conducive to it, and because you need to be so much closer to your, it's that last mile, right? That's Everybody in industrial always talks about the last mile. So I think it was part of it. I think anything that was online or convenience and had anything to do with delivery definitely had an effect on the industrial and warehouse space, especially the stuff that's closer to residential areas. Mm-hmm. The trick there, both before and moving forward, which is why I think the concept of these like WeWork type cloud kitchens is interesting, is that if you think about it, most of the warehouse that are very, very close to residential have changed uses, or they're not getting industrial prices anymore. They're getting retail rents, right? Because you can use a lot of them for retail, and to the point, you look at Wynwood, you look at Allapattah, you look at all these, those aren't even warehouse prices anymore. So I think that's going to be one of the changes too, because ghost kitchens and commissary kitchens really only work close to their population, right? And if you go too far out, Domino's isn't going to be able to deliver a pizza in 30 minutes or less from out by the Everglades and the Turnpike, where a lot of the big logistics places are, but that are far removed from the industrial. So I'm super, super interested in the concept more. So here's a confession. I have never, ever, ever, ever used a DoorDash or a Grubhub. I wouldn't know how to use it. I have never, I order for takeout all the time, but I'm one of those that if I'm not going to eat in the restaurant, I'm going to go pick it up. I don't want somebody deciding that he's really hungry and snacking on my food in the car.
That is so funny.
So that's not the real reason. I've never done it, but
I think that's why they package it in the way they do. But that's neither here nor there.
Emergency safety cap,
just in case.
So I've never used one. Yeah. So for me, the interesting part is really what kind of cool pop-ups are we going to get? Because that's another thing, right? You have all of these temporary uses to try to test a concept. In retail, it could be a pop-up store. In restaurants, it could be the food truck. It could be the ghost kitchen. So I'm excited to hear and see, because restaurants are in such huge demand right now, because convenience is at a premium, especially in the United States. You know, if you're working all day and then you've got to take your kids to, you know, the sports and the tutor and this and that, and you get home and, you know, you're either going to call your grocery store and they're delivering groceries, or you're going to order out and have the food delivered or have it waiting for you and pick it up on the way. And I definitely don't think that's going away. I don't care what the economy does. I don't care what the pandemic, you know, did. And the fact that it's not there anymore, I think there's going to still be that need for these types of spaces. And if you're a restaurant starting, I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to recently, and, you know, they're brand new operators. They've never had a restaurant before. They don't have a business plan. It's like, okay, let's start with the business plan and the finances and your concept. And then don't go straight to a lease where you're paying top rent right now in Miami. Most of it is triple net with pass-throughs, right? So you're paying all of the expenses on top of that. And because retail space in general and restaurant space in particular is in such high demand in South Florida, you're going to be tied to a much longer term lease. So if you just have a concept, you know, try it out in a ghost kitchen. I'm interested in that, especially since I love small businesses. You and I talk about it all the time. But
and I think to your point that you made at the start of this is there was a time in which financially it made sense to do a lot of these new concepts, because the cost of leasing out industrial property, even with the cost of turning it into a ghost kitchen, was significantly less than what you were paying for retail. But what I'm seeing as a trend is that a lot of these regional brands that want to grow and that now are going to go from 1 unit to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 is they're looking to create a commissary kitchen where they can do a lot of the cooking and a lot of the prepping for all of the stores in one location, right? One warehouse location that is central enough where early in the morning you could have all of their vans deliver to the restaurants, which are really where the last, that last mile is going to be. And so I don't think that is a concept that will go away. I think there's always going to be demand for industrial spaces that are centrally located, that do have the ability to have the grease trap, the hood and everything, and for that to be ready. And, in regards to the way that the consumer has shifted their behavior with deliveries and all of the stuff, I think that is certainly not something that will go away. But definitely, the cost is a shared cost between, the purveyor of the goods and the consumer. And it is significant. So there is a big jump. And I don't know that that's something that the restaurants will figure out on their own. Some will, right?
Right.
There's something about the fact that all those apps have been around and they're still around, and they're still doing well. So, at some point you would think that there would have been some merging, of those apps, and maybe in the future that will be the case. What is never going to change is the fact that the consumer has shifted, their behavior.
And the reality is that if they're used to using an app for delivery, it's going to be really hard because they're used to it. It's a habit, right? So they just go, they look for whichever app they have and order. So
I find this so interesting that if you're in the restaurant business, you really get a glimpse as to where society is. Mm-hmm. And so like one of the biggest concerns right before the pandemic was the fact that the restaurants work by how many seats they can turn over. They're looking at, on average, people would come, have a meal, and it might, if it was lunch, it might be 30 minutes, right? They'll be in and out usually in 20 minutes because they have a 30-minute lunch. They'll go back and all of the stuff. And then for dinner, again, there was conversation. There was maybe a bottle of wine. You eat all the stuff, but there was a certain amount of time in which they were sitting down and then they would turn over the seat. That behavior totally shifted with the advent of the phones, right? The advent of the iPhone and the like. And now people were sitting in those seats 30, 40 minutes longer than they were ever before. And all of that time is costing money to the restaurant. So the shift, the restaurants have to now shift their way of approaching this in order to address that issue. They can turn over a lot of deliveries because some of those orders come in at the same time. Right. They don't have to worry about that time component. And if you have a ghost kitchen, right, you're not having the servers, you're not having all of the extra stuff, and all you're doing is basically cooking, packaging, and waiting for the delivery guy to come knocking at your door.
Right. I have noticed a little bit away from ghost kitchens, but maybe the popularity will increase because, to your point, I've been to 2 restaurants recently that I'm used to going to.
Right.
And both of them have given us a time limit. And
interesting.
When I go out to eat, if you give me a time limit, I'm done. I'm not going to eat there. I'm not going to mention the name of the restaurant because I'm hoping that was just a blip. But I get that you want to turn over fast. Correct. Charge me more, let me sit. But if I need to eat super, super fast and inhale everything, correct, I might as well order out and eat at home. It takes away from the experience. No doubt. If I happened to be with a couple that we hadn't seen in a while, we were trying to catch up. We only had that one night. We were looking. It was horrible. And I love this place. We go to this place several times a month. It's amazing. And now I'm like, okay, maybe from now on I just order from there because I don't want to be rushed, especially not if I'm seeing people that I haven't seen in a while and I'm catching up. I mean, if I'm just with Carlos, I don't want to be rushed through a meal. If we're taking the time to get dressed and not eat in our PJs,
No, but I think restaurants will find a more creative way of addressing that. And I don't know exactly how they would do it, but like there are a few things that you pick up on when you go to a restaurant nowadays. Like a lot of the new restaurants have an Instagram wall, and some of them even are creating like entire walks outside. And I think what they want to do is invite people to feel like, okay, we finished our meal, let's go
move around. We
check this out. Right. Let's go. And I think that there's no industry that is more adaptable or more prone to understand shifts in and change and adapting to those changes than the restaurant industry. And when we've seen it, hence the ghost kitchens and the proliferation of it.
Ghost kitchens don't just work for restaurants, right? They're also great. So I think of Misha's, right? So Misha's, she literally started making Misha's cupcakes in her kitchen, right? They started in their kitchen, then they needed a formal kitchen, so they had to move out, and now they do both. They have a formal kitchen and they have retail space, and they sell them, at Milam's, they sell them at the airport. Again, if you're making kombucha or fish dip or cupcakes or whatever in your kitchen and you need a place to go, again, instead of investing in a huge amount of equipment and trying to find a place and get the permits for the grease trap and everything else, I think Ghost Kitchen is a great first step to take at a much reduced cost than it would take you to open something. And not only, even if your concept works because you've already proven it, the fact that you can start out slower while you spread the word and get the contracts with Miami Airport or Milam's or whoever it's going to be. That's right. And then you can go into bricks and mortar, right?
And in an age where, sometimes things just go viral, the word of mouth that happens through social media, there is some natural growth that happens, and you have to be up for it.
Right. And to your point, with the fish dip company and Pinecrest Market, the farmers markets are huge here, right? I mean, even in the middle of hot, muggy summer with thunderstorms and everything, they're super popular. And it was super cool because, I've lived in Pinecrest for a gazillion years before we had a farmer's market. And I went with my granddaughter the other day, and it was super cool because there were so many young families, and everybody's running into each other, and they're using it as a social time and a gathering. And, what better way to gather than around food? And Zach the baker also started, going from a small, cooking bread in his kitchen to now he's huge, and his delicious bread is everywhere. So again, if you're looking at going back to our theme kind of October and Halloween and fear and planning and how it all works together is having a plan on how if taking a concept from the very, very inklings of an idea and eliminating the fear of whether or not you're going to succeed or how to proceed, taking these steps and having these steps being a part of your plan in the food industry, farmers markets, ghost kitchens, etc., I think is one way to make sure that your goals and your dreams still come true without a huge, financial commitment right on the line, and also frustrations, because if you're just starting and you don't have a name, right now in Miami, you're competing against the Ariete Group, Major Food Group, all of these, local homegrown restaurants and concepts, as well as the ones coming from Chicago and New York and everywhere else. So avoid the frustration.
Just all together.
Avoid the frustration. Start with the concept. Start with an idea, and guess what? Then when you're done, you can tell them what your sales were just at a farmer's market, or you can tell them what your delivery sales are, etc. And then you can be like the two Korean girls looking for brick and mortar space.
For sure. Well, I love the farmers market. It's so great, really, and it also helps shape what reaction you're seeing from the consumer, because you're seeing it right in front of you.
True.
So you get a better sense of where you're at and how many people come back week after week to buy your product. It's almost like market research, but on a very local and very hands-on level. So I think that's an important.
Where they call it a focus group. You have a live focus group every single weekend.
Right, exactly. It's fantastic. We often drive around and we see a lot of development, especially these blocks of land that are getting developed for industrial. And I always thought that they're looking for economies of scale, right? I don't have to build 10 grease traps. I could just build 2 really large grease traps. I can create more scale and still have access to all this stuff. So the thing is that I know in South Florida, land is very much a premium. Do you see new developments that are going to be purely like food and beverage concept that are not necessarily a retail component?
I don't know. I haven't really thought about it, just because we're so strapped just for logistics and distribution space. And we have so many of the big guns in here investing massive amounts of money because they know that, first of all, a lot of our inventory is old, right, with the lower ceilings, and those are the ones that are being converted, or now with the Live Local being, people are trying to redevelop them into housing and mixed use. But what I think would be interesting is if there continues to be a huge demand and again, that might not work in Miami unless it's in a C-class building, but would be a conversion of office space, because there are certain industries, and I think, we just probably beat the food industry to death with the ghost kitchen idea, but there's that one. But there's also a need for like medical labs, right? And doing the science and everything else. So you have something like Converge Miami. And I think with the premium on industrial being super, super high for new industries entering the market, that you're going to get more of these shared workspace, but that are hyper specific. Like, it's super expensive to open a medical lab, just like it's super expensive to open a restaurant. So if you have these filler spaces, right, that can take an idea and let somebody play with the idea until they decide they need more space or they need a full manufacturing system or a full manufacturing site, then that's where I see that. And to me, that's exciting, because think about it. We're trying to bring more manufacturing back from overseas to the Americas, right? So that would mean you would need more manufacturing space. But manufacturing space, once you have it, you don't leave, right? Because manufacturing is expensive. You're putting in heavy equipment, you're putting in heavy electrical, you're putting in high demand stuff. So once you have that, it's harder for them to leave. But what if you're in the wrong area for distribution? Or what if something changes? Like right now, there's a huge shift, and Casey Conway has been talking about this for years, as has Anna Bozovic from Anna's Analytics. The shift from the West Coast to the East Coast, and the shift from the Midwest and North, South, right? So, well, what if I'm a manufacturing plant and all my stuff is no longer the area to be? it's much more expensive to move. But if you have these concept, for better word, concept areas, concept manufacturing sites, concept kitchens, where you can play with the idea and the distribution, then I think that would be interesting. That doesn't really answer your question.
No, because all I've seen is an adaptation of or a conversion to a commercial a ghost kitchen. I haven't seen a lot of ground up development where it originally going to be like that. I mean, there is some, but not to a scale where you would say, wow, this is a trend that is taking over.
Right, and then it would be bigger because then it would be more. So let's say you go from ghost kitchen, which is very small space, to I think what you're talking about is almost ghost manufacturing, right? So it would be more like having much bigger kitchens that are but used by several different users that are strictly used to ship product out, right? That's interesting.
I concur. Well, what I think is there seems to be this idea of adaptive reuse doesn't seem to be just a today thing. I think that we're going to see different iterations of buildings, regardless of what asset class they are right now, and I think to me that's very exciting.
Absolutely. So don't let current use affect your creativity.
Right, correct. Exactly. Always look at what it could be.
Yeah. What do they say, that those who are crazy enough to imagine it are crazy enough to get it done, or something to that effect?
I will say that while I was in Atlanta, there is a development, Ponce City Market, and it was a Sears and Roebuck. Yeah, it tells you how much I want coffee right now. Sears and Roebuck, that from 1926, and it became vacant, and it's this beautiful red brick, old building, and the developers bought it and totally renovated, and now it is a destination. I mean, you have to go, when you're in Atlanta, you have to go see this place. Not only do you have all of the retail stores and a lot of great restaurants, you have some sort of a food hall that is set up in the ground floor, and then in the top floors you have entertainment venues. Basically, they rent out the entire rooftop. You have one area that is for events. You have another area that that has all the catering, everything ready, all the kitchen in the back, and then you have the other side that has all of these games, and it's like a carnival, and you have all the carnival games, and there's atmosphere, there's a DJ, there's a bar. It's really incredible how those things are revitalized with a lot of creativity, and listen, suffice it to say, a lot of money. They paid $27 million for the site. This is what happens when you're a realtor. You go to a place and you're like, you're not satisfied just to know, like, oh, what a cool idea, they did an amazing job, but you start looking at the numbers, right? And then you're like, all right, good local developer, did good, what an incredible concept, paid $27 million for the site, invested $180 million for the conversion, and that was back in 2014, so it's coming up to 10 years. But to tell you that it is it is brim full. I didn't see vacancies. It is a full mixed use project. They also have something called the Flats at Ponce that has residential, and
within the same building.
Within the same, it's all in the same footprint of where the building is. So it's right next to the building. Okay. I mean, it's really very creative, and it's a great thing. So
that made me think of the Bottle Works Hotel in Indianapolis, and that whole bottle that used to be an old Coca-Cola plant. But again, it's easier to tear down than to redo, but they redid it, and it's spectacular.
But now that once you do it, once you have it's quite the experience.
Right. So I want to thank all of those visionaries who take old buildings and come up with really cool concepts, because I love the old buildings.
Absolutely.
So your fun stat.
Well, in keeping with the fact that there's an incredible growth in food deliveries, then you would tend to think that there would be an incredible growth in ghost kitchens, and I believe those numbers pan out. So the market size for cloud kitchens is about $57 billion. It is forecasted to be $113 billion by 2027. Wow. So again, incredible growth in the size of the cloud kitchen market. So
going in tandem with that, Bloomberg's second measured transaction data for the delivery apps shows that in August of 2023, DoorDash and its subsidiary Caviar earned 65% of the meal delivery market. So yeah, DoorDash had its public market debut. They did their IPO in 2020. It was one of the biggest ones ever. And it accounts for an increasing percentage of market share during COVID-19. Between 2019 and 2023, the market share of DoorDash doubled.
Wow. So they're leading the way. They're
leading the way by
they're
a
the
lot.
big honcho in the group.
65%. I think Uber Eats, which is the next one, is like at 23.
Right. Wow. That's huge. Well, we'll see what other iterations of this concept are out there. All right. As always, thank you all for listening to Between Two Chairs. We are looking forward to our next episode. And
oh yeah, our next episode. It's a big treat. Investing on the edge of scary. Not going to want to miss it.
I love it. All right. Bye, everybody.